First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing frogs.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go along that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but an erratic detective, is Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, Gildarie, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Welcome to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon Show. Because of different time zones, it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a live program that comes to you twice weekly, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8:30 to 9:30. It takes two formats. We interview people who are achievers or people who have things to say that will resonate with whoever is watching, but mostly in Guyana. And secondly, we also have a call-in section that is mostly on Friday evenings. This, again, is the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon Show. If you have your smartphone, just go to Guyanese Critic Facebook page and you will see us live, or type in TBN Guyana, and we're also on YouTube. Our guest this evening is very special for two reasons. One, she's a woman, and we've had a paucity of women guests on this program. Women are very special. Some would say philosophically they're the foundation of civilization. Personally, that's my belief too. So we need to have as much women on this program. If you are looking on this program and you're an entrepreneur, you're a woman that has made sparkling achievements to Guyana in any sector of life in Guyana, please contact Leonard Gildarie and I, and we're glad to have you on the program. My cell is 614-5927. Leonard, your cell phone is what?
637-1071.
637-1071. Please call us and you can use our platform so Guyanese can know who you are. So that's the first reason our guest is special. She's a woman, and we need women in this country in dominating in any type of role, but mostly their presence should equal men. And on this program, men have outstripped the women guests. So we're glad we have a very prominent woman in our midst this evening. Secondly, she's special in the sense that not many persons in this country, male or female, have chalked up 33 years, consecutive years of experience in the banking sector and the financial sector. When you have 33 years in experience in banking and finance in a country as small as this that is now opening up, that is a tremendous asset. Our guest this evening is Shaleeza Shaw. Shaleeza Shaw. I thought it was Eugene. I just pronounced her name. I've known her for more than 20 something years. Shaleeza Shaw is our guest. She has a first degree in business management, a second degree from a Welsh University in business management, and she also has an LLB. Ms. Shaw has held very, very important positions at GBTI, at one time acting CEO, and she was manager for the main branch of Demerara Bank. She sits as the chairman of the investment committee of the National Resource Fund. Now that is a very pivotal position. She's also on the board of Gaisuku and NCN. Ms. Shaw is now on her own, holding her own consultancy company called Opulent Consultancy. Well, after 33 years, maybe it's time for her to be her own boss. Gildarie will be surprised because about a dozen guests on this program, I have taught them, and Gildarie would say, you teach everybody that come on this program. Well, I have taught our guest. She was one of my favorite students. Now, she is a big name in business and finance. So I'm proud of my student. Guyanese, wherever you are, welcome to Shaleeza Shaw. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Freddie.
And you know the famous journalist, Leonard Gildarie. I will now hand you over to Leonard.
Thank you very much, Freddie. And folks, good night wherever you are. Good morning. Freddie, I listened to what you would have said there, and it is always good to hear about the qualifications of our people, to hear about our people excelling in whatever they do. More so, I think significantly, and I agree with you, when we have our ladies, our women of this country taking top positions, and especially I think the one that really had me going was the National Resource Fund. So very important. I think this where the oil wealth is going. And imagine you somebody sitting there in the decision-making process and who is helping to guide that process forward. How do you spend the money and where it goes, and to oversee that entire process there. As we go forward, and I've always said it, I will continue to say it, we will need all hands on deck. Not only the opposition, but everybody in this country, out of this country, Freddie Kissoon. And we cannot sit back and just allow things to go. We have to, as citizens of this country, continue to make our voices known, whether it's an accident in our neighborhood, whether it's speeding, whether it's crime in our neighborhood, whether it's corruption by contractors or by councillors or by government officials. You open your mouth and say, this country belongs to everybody. That being said, I am pretty much interested in Ms. Shaw and some of her experiences, and maybe we could talk about her experiences in banking too, because as this country move forward, we would have to modernize very quickly. How far behind are we in the banking system? How far are we behind in customer service? Because customer service, banking, and everything goes hand in hand. Are we ready as a people to take on oil and gas as we move forward? Are we ready as a people to capitalize on the opportunities that are there? But I stop here for the time being, and back to you, Freddie Kissoon.
Shaleeza, let's start first with, no, not your UG days. Forget about that. The first thing that people ask women when they interview them in a male-dominated world, and most of the occupations in the world today, journalism, engineering, banking, politics, there is a predominance of men. You've spent 33 years in banking and in finance. Was it a struggle for a woman to reach at the apex of her career? Was it a struggle, or were you just nicely patronized?
Well, Freddie, good evening to both of you, and thank you for the opportunity for being on your program and to share some thoughts. To answer your question, I wouldn't say it was a struggle. I started at the age of 18. I was just out of high school, not qualified then, because I worked and I studied as I went along. But I think I was always diligent, and I always did well academically. So what I believe happened is that as I did well, I was promoted pretty quickly within the banking system. And I think the ascension is what got me there, the recognition. I think it was all merit-based. You work hard. I was not a staff who was very exacting, 9 to 5, as we say. I would put in the extra hours. I always remember, even as a young staff, when I was done with my list of duties, I would go to my supervisor and say, I have nothing to do. Can you give me work? I don't know that that's something that happens now, but that was me back then. And I was always interested in learning. And the good thing with banking back then is you moved around departments. So as you moved around, you got to learn more. And do you know that when I started at GBTI, I started at the switchboard?
Well,
yeah, because funny.
That's what I do as a, that's
a real climb.
No, because funny, they had a system that the each new female staff had to hold the switchboard.
and that was the first thing that you did.
So I mean it was surprising when I'd already gotten the job, but I mean we changed that system after, right? But I have no regrets too, because customer service is how you speak. How you speak on the phone can make a customer want to come to the bank. So my training start from right at the bottom.
So Gildarie, before you come in, I once called GBTI long time ago, and the switchboard answered me, and the person was rude. That would not have been her.
That couldn't have been Miss Shaw.
Over to you, Gildarie.
No, you
Out
see.
of all the hundreds of people that would have been there, how you come down to the lady?
No, you
because of the time she had that position.
How may I help you?
I think that was the time I called. Anyway, over to you.
The vintage Freddie Kissoon there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm interested because let's talk banking for a little while, because of course your portfolio as to your experiences is so many things. We talk business in a short while. Let's talk banking. How far back is the banking system in Guyana when it comes to customer service? Could you assess that in terms of customer service and maybe technology too?
Well, if I could rewind a little, because obviously you have to know where we've evolved from to appreciate where we are and where we need to go. I mean, banking, when I started, there weren't much computer systems. And so I think it was around 1992, we started to evolve more. 1994, GBTI was the first bank to introduce the ATM teller machine. And I think just around the same time, the bank refurbished with its new imagery. I don't know if you remember, Freddie, the whole wrong front. The whole building, yes, right. Which was the main branch. And there was massive construction, not just the remodeling. It was the first bank that I believe went all out computers on the desk. It was amazing. It was amazing because there was months of construction. We were working in this, we had to adjust as construction went. For months, you're dealing with customers in some corner of the area as well. And then, suddenly everything is done and it unfolds before you, and you come in the bank and at every desk there's a computer. So I would say in the 90s it evolved. Telephone banking evolved too, when you could call in and get your balance rather than come into the bank. And that was the quiet progression. Then with the ATM, you were able to get to utility payments, right? So we evolved. Today we have online banking. There's the retail and the corporate modules. Retail is for the individuals or an individual business. The corporate module, that's for a company where you may have layers of access that you want, what permission you want to give your senior officers and things like that. If there's room for improvement, yes. Some persons say that probably we need to migrate to what we call in-bank kiosks, where you go and you just put your fingerprint or something and you just do your transaction. You don't have to interface with a teller. Well, you do have the mobile banking now too, right? That has evolved where you can do mobile banking. I think the online banking, the one thing I would like to see it evolve to is more straight through transactions. You know, we had a little chat before the program. Straight through in the sense that you sit and you say, I want to pay Freddie 100,000. His account is at Republic Bank. And it goes straight through. Not all the bank, their modules are quite in tune with that, but I know they are working towards it. I think some banks are already there, but that's something we need to do. What I would also like to see in banking is an integration with, I would say, other key areas. Whether in foreign banks, you see, you can pay, you can deal with your tax payments through the platform as well. Not just bank-to-bank transactions.
Like VAT, let's say you pay a monthly VAT payment, you could be able to do that to the bank, to GRA directly.
Yes, and get your receipt back and everything. And funny, you know, I recently joined the Indian Chamber of Commerce, and one of the things one of the Indian national was showing me, he can do certain payments on WhatsApp. Right? I guess in some ways it might have some mirroring to the MNG, but he was showing me that. So we do have some way to go with technology. What I am aware too, being in banking for a while, is some of these apps are expensive. So it does take some capital outlay, and also integration. So if you have your banking platform or your banking software module, your banking app, when you select, you have to go through a process that takes time, and then you have to see how it can integrate, you know, without causing much interference or too much a hiccup, as we say, before you go live. You know, implementation is a whole, you know, process that takes time with banking softwares. And you got to be careful because it's deposit accounts.
Just before you jump in there, Freddie, because along the same line, because I'm interested also, you go to New York and you see how they use the phone and they use the card. Almost everything is card down there. Again, I pose the same question to you. Are we like way back in terms of the usage of the plastic, as they call it?
Well, I wouldn't say that in that the
Is it picking up?
It has. I can say Demerara Bank, which I worked with in the last 3 years, every account that is open, unless, you know, some folks choose a passbook account, once you open a statement type account, you get a debit Visa card, because the beauty about Demerara Bank is they have a principal relationship, no third party. And even at GBTI, where I was, I know
so
we
they're
had
actively pushing it.
Yes. And I think with COVID too, that whole 2 years of COVID, I mean, that really drove persons to transition to plastic, online banking, e-statements. If you know, I think all the banks now no longer give you a physical statement unless you request it or you pay for it. You're getting your statements online. You can check your accounts online. And in fact, it is the way to go, because you give somebody a statement, they just look at it and throw it in the bin these days, right? Because they can go online, check it.
Interesting.
So the banks have evolved in that sense. There's always more to do, like any sector and any industry. There's always room for improvement. Obviously, we're a developing nation. And I mean, with oil and gas now, we have to fast track how we match international services, because obviously the comparison will be spoken of more often now than it was before. And, you know, the time is ripe for us to catapult and transition into that change. And I think all the banks are looking at it. It's just that these things take time.
Freddie?
You know, Leonard, there's so many unsung heroes in this country, and we need to promulgate, disseminate their achievements. I have known Shaleeza for a long time. I taught at UG, and I did not know until this evening that this young lady started a GBTI as a telephone receptionist.
No, she didn't start. She started as an employee, but she started.
She started as a switchboard.
So they didn't. I think what you were saying, they didn't hire you.
Yeah, well, you're hired as a clerk, but you're put to work there.
Well, she started.
It gives you an indication
as to her
achievements.
She started as a switchboard operator, and that lady, years after, walked into GBTI a morning as the acting CEO. Starting from a switchboard operator do you know that in any endeavor in life, that's a phenomenal achievement?
Of course.
Just this, hello, can I help you? You're on to GBTI. And then one day, she was the acting CEO after holding a whole set of important positions. I am so glad that people out there, the thousands who watch this program, would know that you are an unsung hero. That is a phenomenal achievement. Anyone who start from just handing out the ball boy at Wimbledon, and then become a global star, that's a phenomenal achievement. You know, I wonder if some of the persons that you started out with would have been around to see you become what you have achieved at GBTI.
Freddie, you're making me
making you
reflect back. No.
This is history.
I have no regrets, mind you, because I believe, coming from that position and then rising to the apex as acting, what it allows you to do is appreciate the staff there as well. You have an appreciation for the full gamut of the services. And banking is a service. It's not a product. I always tell the staff, it's not where you're selling pens, it's a service. So you have to be an ambassador all the time, in the bank, out the bank, when you're, because there's so many competitors, and it's what you sell is what will make the customers come back, or the impression, that first impression you create is what will either keep that customer or make them go to another bank. But Freddie, to answer your question, there were a few of my colleagues that I started with. Some passed away, some moved on, a lot migrated. But some still stay in touch.
But you see, that has been a theme from the time I became a columnist 34 years ago. That has been a theme. The theme is there are people. You heard what she said? She started out at GBTI, she was a switchboard operator, and she stayed in banking for 33 years. In those times when she stayed in banking, there were no computerized system. Guyana didn't have 4-lane highways. Guyana didn't have this deluge of supermarkets. And these people stayed. She stayed. And you have these people outside who started with her, who started with you and I, who started in journalism like you, started at UG like me, and they're gone. And these are the heroes of Guyana. We stayed. And that was a team, that was what Dr. Mark Curtin mentioned when we interviewed him over his book, Brazil-Guyana Relation. He stayed at UG for 30 years and he wrote a book on Guyana-Brazil relation. She stayed. And I am so proud of her.
But this is interesting because one of the areas that I heard you mention, and which I'm interested to hear about that. The boardroom is known to be a place where it's not easy at times. You have people of different backgrounds, lawyers, and everybody.
Oh yeah,
she's sitting on Guy Suko's board.
I forgot to mention in my document, she's the treasurer of the Guyana India Chamber of Commerce.
We're going to come to that in a short while.
I guess she's going to go to
Guy Suko. I'm interested because of your banking experience. I think that you would have gone there. How much of a challenge is that? Because Gaisuko is facing tremendous challenge in terms of they need the kind of resources Do we get out of sugar? Do we stay in sugar? Are we producing enough? And all the operational problems that you have there. As somebody sitting on the board there, how much of a tearing out of your hair is happening?
No, I think I'm always a candid person. And let me say, I think Gaisuko board has a fine cadre of board members, quite a few who have actually worked in the sector for years. Myself, though I did not work in the sector, interface with the sector from a banking perspective. So I would say we have a good cadre of membership. There will always be differences in views, and maybe some of us are a little more forceful in our expression, but I think that might be more one and far. I will say to you that I know last year, after a certain clip became public,
I remember that.
Public knowledge, the president asked me to chair a special committee in the interim, which I did. And one of the first thing I did was to speak about, you have to set the tone for anything you take up leadership on. One of the first thing I did is I did a PowerPoint, and I did my research about where Gaisuko was, where it is. And within that, we spoke about teamwork. We spoke about the need for respectful discourse. We spoke for the need to listen to the views of others, because it's only collectively that you can come to solutions. And I always say a view that does not necessarily or is not necessarily in congruence with yours doesn't mean it is wrong or it doesn't have its place. It's good to have views sometimes that are different from yours, because it allows you a broader spectrum. It allows you probably to come up with a solution that is more solid and more long lasting.
I want to make a couple of statements here before I ask you. I'm going to put you in a position here. Gaisuko, because I wrote extensively when I was a kite news on Gaisuko, and a lot of people
don't
had
let him lead you to it. Don't.
Freddie, but I remember I was divided in a little way in my emotions about Gaisuko. One thing, how you could be losing money and then still keep a corporation, but then it was pointed out that Gaisuko was doing so many things. When Gaisuko stopped operating, NIS took a big chunk of their revenues or money that came in, went from there. GRA also took a big hit, and there were some other services that they were offering, like drainage and irrigation and so on. And of course, you can't exclude the fact that you're actually employing people. But I want to ask you, Ms. Shaw, that being the case, do you believe, as a board member, you could answer if you don't, but I'd prefer you answer. Do you believe Gaisuko is going anywhere? This country, sugar is going anywhere, rather.
I would answer to say that sugar has always been a part of Guyana's history. I mean, all presidents have spoken to it. I think I remember President Granger calling it one of the six sisters, and I really like that description. Sugar has so much historical meaning to this country, and I don't think it's something that we can let go overnight. I think the past government was trying to phase it out. It has its place. It's a needed commodity, I will tell you. Being in private sector, it's a needed commodity, because when it's short, even through the chambers, we're clamoring for it. What I think it's important is Gaisuko, like most public sector institution, have not taken on, how do I put it, a private sector approach in their management. And I think that's the transition government is trying to make, not just with Gaisuko, to move away eventually from this, what we call subsidizing of it. And I believe that's possible. Gaisuko has staff who are qualified and I believe competent enough to help that change. One of the other things too is Gaisuko does provide quite a bit of employment. So for any large corporation, whether it's public or private sector, you do have to take cognizance of that, because you then depending on the manner in which you take action, you have to then deal with what we call socioeconomic impact. And as you deal with decision making, you have to have all of that in your fold, right? So it's important in speaking about any sector, private or public. You know, it's like in banking when you have to go foreclosure or move on a debenture. It's almost like similar, right? If you're going to shut down somewhere or not. Because you got to think of the employees and all of that. At the same time, if you're in the cheerleading, you still got to balance it with what we call the stakeholders' interests and profitability and revenue generation. So I would answer it in that way if it helps.
No, I thank you very much for that. It's a fair statement. Freddie?
What is fair and logical is that if anybody is watching us here, and I'm sure there are thousands who must be saying to themselves, ask her. So we're going to ask her. The commercial banks have now, for the past 15 years, have outstripped the police force, GPL, GWI, and GT&T. Those were the NIS.
Not GPL.
NIS. It's NIS, GPL, GWI, GT&T in the police force for criticisms. And I have seen the vice president of this country about 3 months ago at the open press conference lambasting the onerous impositions. At one point, I think he closed it by saying, next thing you don't want it to take off your clothes. I've seen the president, I've known remarks that the president made to me, and I wrote about it. The commercial banks, if you read the letter sections of all the newspapers the past 15 years, is that they seem to burden people with obligations that should not be there and are not part of the Money Laundering Act. For example, I got so many complaints that I went and I read the Money Laundering Act. It says any credible form of proof of address. It did not delineate a utility bill, that. It says any credible form of proof of address. Now you have the most powerful country in the world, the United States. You have the United States Embassy, which is a part of the United States government, writing to you to say, Mr. Jones, 73 Hatfield Street, please come in for an interview. And that document is not accepted. And I think that the criticisms of the impositions of the commercial bank on people who just want to bank little money, a teacher, a soldier. How do you react to that, Shaleeza?
Freddie, I know it's been one of your pet subjects. I don't think I would have gotten away tonight without Freddie pressing that. But you're right. Right in the sense, well, let me put it this way. The Anti-Money Laundering Act was introduced in 2009. And we have to appreciate that it would have been new to the banks. So I think it took a while. It was implemented very quickly, because I remember in 2009 being a part of the team at GBTI that we had to put together a manual overnight. You probably would know that too. But it did have conditions there that we had to follow. There were regulations there that we had to follow. I think initially what happened with the Anti-Money Laundering Act is there wasn't a supporting regulation or guideline, right? You know, sometimes an act comes out and it's there with these macro objectives, but how to go about doing it, that wasn't there. So when the Money Laundering Act came out in 2000, you had just the act. So you were going based on what was in the act. And I think section 16 is very strict. And they do have penalties, right? Some strong penalties, millions of dollars or jail time. And it then called, as objections were made from persons as vocal as yourself for review. And I think that has happened gradually, probably not as fast as you would have liked. And because of our terrain, like you talk about proof of address, not all over in this country has a post office, so some people don't have a proof of address. So the banks have innovated over time and come up with accepting notarized thing. I remember past minister is Valerie Garidalo, yeah.
Amazing official.
Yes, I remember one time she met with myself and my former CEO, and she mentioned the two shows work on, and we said, but no, and that time I was a GBTI with Lethem branch. And we told her, no, we have the system where if they don't, then a two-show could sign. So you had to improvise ways. And I mean, today, thankfully, a driver's license now, for most bank, covers your TIN, your ID, and your proof of address.
Right, that works for it.
So I wouldn't say it was all smooth. It has been a process of evolution. And you see, it requires the regulators too. So supervision guideline 13 came out and give a little more, as you say, it spoke to reasonable, credible, include but not limited to, but it didn't necessarily tell you exactly what. So it still left room for the banks now, and that's why you had each bank interpreting as to their, but as the Bankers Association worked together, because they now have like subcommittees for different aspects, they were able to come to have a more, as I would say, broad-based approach, a common approach in what they asked for.
I was going, some people complained to me, I was going to picket GWI, a one-man picket. And then somebody told me, no, that was years ago. Okay. Then somebody told me, no man, don't do Shaleeza Shaw that. She's a good CEO. And I didn't go and pick it anymore.
But GWI or GBTI?
GBTI.
No, but to come back to that point there, I know that with regards to the pensioners and so, I think it's either the Ministry of Finance or Bank again had done some relaxation. I could remember seeing the circular, the press statement for that.
For small accounts,
right.
Small
so the pensioner will get in a problem. Imagine you coming in and it's only proof of address and it's for 600 different things. So they did some relaxations, a little easier. But I did raise an issue here a couple months back. I went and opened 2 accounts like within a week or two. And they asked me for a set of documents. I produced that. And the same account holders are opening in a week at a time. I said, but use the same information for that. And the guy said, no, you have to produce it back. So I said, let me see the manager. And I asked the manager specifically, I said, is it your requirement or is it the Bank of Guyana requirement or is it AML laws? They said, no, it's some discretion that they take on their part. So they said, no, because of you produce it in the first instance, we will relax it and you could use those same documentation for the second account. And I thought that was good because it means that there's some kind of discretionary powers there. So I believe what Ms. Shaw has said there. In the inception, when the AML come out, there's a lot of nervousness making sure that we're not in breach. And everybody wanted to toe the line. As you learn about it, we relax ourselves. But I do believe that sometimes, I think the banks and maybe there's not enough training for the counter staff and so on. And that's not being reflected there. But it is interesting. But along the same lines, I saw the president recently talk about customer service and the kind of training in Guyana. How ready are we for oil and gas and what is to come in terms of raising our standards, customer service?
I think there's room for improvement because, I mean, Freddie, you talked about it. Ongoing training is necessary. And like I said earlier, it's a service sector. So service is important. And I think whether it's through legislation or whatever, we need to also transition to like how I'm a consultant now. If I'm acting on behalf of you, are the banks willing to deal with me strictly until your account is open? And there are ways to verify you, whether you're in person. A lot of places now are using WhatsApp. But let me say to you, we have a lot of non-resident customers, and the Anti-Money Laundering Act is very strict on vetting identity for non-residents as well. So that's where there's a little balancing that we have to do. But I would like to see banks, and I think it might require some legislation, being able to send their staff to corporate locations.
But not only for the bank, we're talking generally across, I think, customer service at the airport, customer service at the fast food joints. I think we haven't really started getting it, that if you just screw up at that point of contact between you, whether you're delivering pizza or, let's say, coffee, I ain't gonna call names, or whoever it is, that we have to really step up our game and the kind of training, because if the people know and they haven't received the training,
That's a question. That's a question.
But then that's abroad. That's broad. That's outside of banking.
Right. I'm not talking, but I'm talking to you as somebody involved in the chambers.
He wants your opinion
in the chambers, but also in different.
Well, if you ask me as a private sector person, yes, and it's investment in training, and it's whether our businesses are willing to invest. Training is a cost, right? The good thing now is there's so much online. I mean, even at the chambers, we've done a lot of online webinars, which are training. And I mean, I know like the government said they're going to have this tourism training. And it's needed, because you don't want, when you find a lot of new businesses start, and the first few months, the service is perfect, and then there's a dip, right? And I think that's where we need to up our game to maintain consistency. I think that's what we need to do. Maintain consistency. Do reminder training. We have to get staff keyed in and motivated. We have to look at that. We also have to look at retention, because right now getting staff is an issue all over.
It's right? Labor shortage. Bad.
Yeah. So it's a combination of factors, I would say.
If you just join us, our guest is a unique woman, Miss Shaleeza Shaw, 33 years in banking and finance. She has a first degree in business management, a master's degree in business management from a Welsh university. She also been certified by the Jamaican and Scottish banking institutions. She is currently heading her own consultancy, Opulent Consultancy. Ms. Shaw is a board member of NCN and Gaisuku, and she is associated with the Shahid Boys and Girls Orphanage. We will come to the orphanage later, but let's come to the opulent question of Opulent Consultancy. Shaleeza, why was it named Opulent?
You know, Freddie, that wasn't my intention. When I formulated it, I was trying to get something with optics, because I wanted something with transparency, something that reflected transparency. But there was already so much optics and optical, but I still wanted it to have a savvy ring. So I ended up with opulent, which isn't quite what I wanted, but it just worked.
So you are the managing director of Opulent,
yes,
and
yes.
You're satisfied so far with its shape and how it's going?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I only really kickstarted. I set up the company in October, and I kickstarted the second week in January, and it's been going pretty well. I was able to do some work with. Having had banking experience, when the Ministry of Natural Resources was rolling out the forestry revolving loan, they needed somebody to do the implementation modalities. And I did a lot of that at GBTI back then. So, and I had worked with some of the ministries on some of the loan programs, you know, some of them when they're IDB funded or CIE was involved and things. So, it was like right up my cup of tea, as we say. So I kickstarted there. Outside of that, my network that I have already from private sector and banking. And I think too, this is an era where a lot is happening, but people are also looking for persons of integrity and confidentiality who are not going to steal their ideas, you know, if they come for a business plan or sell it out. And I think
Let me stop
it's
you right
my
here and then.
fortunate
Ms. Shaw,
luck.
how bad of a problem do we have in Guyana in terms of stealing of ideas and in terms of I know plenty of people present ideas, but there's a lot of carpetbaggers, people who are between, they say that they're connected with government and then they take these things and they hook it up with some other companies and steal ideas. Do we have a major problem right now?
I don't know if it's major. What I do know is one or two of my clients that I've met, they've said, I'm comfortable dealing with you. I trust you. Because I can trust telling you my business. I can trust telling you. But I can't speak broadly, but I know it is a problem. The magnitude I can't speak of.
But I think the point where you're trying to make
But
is
it does
that
exist.
your experience and your networking capacity over the years and your credibility has worked well with your consultancy that you've now established.
Yes.
Very, very good. Freddie?
Well, I would have thought that with her experience, she would have had a track record, and I guess that track record is paying off now.
Yes.
The consultant, so you would say you're happy with your new venture?
Yes, I'm happy. I also want a little more time for myself because I've given quite a bit. So.
When you want to wake up, you wake up and you want to wake up.
Well, funny, they say sometimes when you have your own business, you work harder, right? Because it's as you get it, you got to run with it too. So it's not always when I want to wake up; it's when I have to wake up.
Okay. But this is good. You know, Freddie. When I look at it, one of the most I see all over the world, countries sing praises of the people that they have, whether it's the footballers, whether it's Wall Street and the bankers there and everything, and the power brokers across here.
From switchboard to CEO.
Yeah, when you see our ladies of this country rise to positions at top position, apex to use the word. It is good, and especially with her being involved with the Chamber of Commerce. One of the things I think you would have been watching behind the scenes, so I'm not sure if it's your attention, but we had a conversation about it. A lot of people, and ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to this. There's a significant portion, and I've been hearing the thing being complained. A lot of people have not been paying the NIS and they're self-employed. That's aside from employers taking the NIS contribution and not remitting it to NIS. But a lot of people do not see it is so very important. And I think it's time for the education. I don't think NIS is doing a pretty good job of enforcing, one, and two, educating our people. And next thing you know, you wake up at 60 years and then realize, I think it's 65 years, right, that you get your NIS. And they realize there's no pension to get from NIS. 60.
Yeah, 60.
At 60, you don't get no NIS pension, all because you decide to keep that money there and you didn't want to remit a few thousands to NIS. You can't benefit from the NIS medical benefits, or even if you die, there's a funeral benefit I think you could benefit from. And it so happens that you're only going to end up dependent on the government old age, which is, I think, less than 30,000. Has this been something, I know from the private sector perspective now, that the GCCI has been paying attention to? Have you started anything along that area there? I'm just asking you. I know. But it has been bothering me, and I want to ask everybody in the country.
No, and it's fine. It's a fair question.
Well, go around the country asking people, and since you want to ask everybody.
I think by and large, putting on my private sector cap, there is the urge for adherence to NIS, because I'll tell you, to become a member of the chambers, it is one of the requirements that you have to submit. Some people may not have right away, but we do give a time frame. But it is one of the requirements. So that in itself, like I said, signals the private sector championing of NIS. And I think for most private sector business that have staff, they would conform as far as I know. I don't know any, I can't tell you any off
If they're members, but there's a lot of them that
Are
have
you
been
still
on that.
serving in the private sector commission? I know you once.
Not private sector commission on the chambers. I'm still the chairperson of the Green Economy Committee. I was elected
the Chamber of
councillor.
Commerce.
Yeah, I was elected councillor, but I demitted that office. But I'm still the chairperson for the Green Economy Committee. But I say that. But the other thing I also need to share with you too is some businesses are not taking on permanent employees because of the fluidity of the labor sector right now. So if you have casual, then that might only be taken on when needed. So I think we might also need to bear that in mind when we speak about NIS, because if you have permanent staff, you definitely need to have their NIS contribution made. But if you you have what we call during peak periods, people just take on employees for them, then those wouldn't fall into the realm of an NIS contribution.
What were the ups and downs of this 33 years? You traveled, of course, during those 33 years in and out of Guyana. You were probably attached to branches out of Region 4 and those things, right?
Yeah, I've enjoyed I have to say I've enjoyed GBTI, growing with GBTI. You know, I tell you I was there when GBTI installed the AC, right? And I was a teller and going the next morning. So when they installed the AC for the first time, I think it was 1992, they left it on evening for it to cool the building. So the next day we went and water was coming down the glass, you know, and as a teller, when you're flicking the money, your fingers stiff, right? But the journey has been awesome. I've always been open, and I always say this to staff: any position you're put in, embrace it and do your best, because everything you learn from. And the good thing with GBTI, it grew to 13 locations. So and in each location had its own identity, right? And its own peculiarity. So it was interesting. I don't know if that answers it enough.
Okay, sure. I just wanted to touch on your 33 years. How did you end up in India?
In India? I'll tell you why. Because in the Indian chamber...
In case the viewers don't know, she's the treasurer of the India Guyana Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. Well, funny, some of the persons on the chambers, the Indian nationals, because I'm chairperson of the Green Economy Committee, some of them, one of them was on it, and some of them, when we had our walks or events, partook in it because he would bring them along. So I don't know if knowing me, and you know, most boards and committees now need women representation, and also qualified women. So I don't know if because of that, it just happened coincidentally, because the same persons who I knew happened to be on the chamber, and they reached out to me, and I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I mean, right now it's interesting for me, Freddie, because Guyana is on a growth trajectory. India is the 5th largest economy right now.
And the largest in terms of
they're
population.
largest in terms of population. They're holding G20. So I find it interesting. I find it interesting to be on the chambers.
Such a powerful woman in Guyana, holding so many positions. What would you say to our people in Guyana who wants to get into business and should adopt a kind of attitude towards being competitive? What would you say to our people in Guyana?
I would say diligence is one. When you want to be successful, you have to put in the hours. In this era, you need to do your market research. You need to study your competition. You also need to study not just giving people a product, what you want, but you need to know if the market wants that, right? So, and you also need to know, sometimes you have to determine, am I going to start at this level and then grow in phases? Is it that I need to get an investor because the business I want needs a huge kickstart, a big bang approach? all of that you have to factor in depending on what the business is. But I would say diligence, commitment. The road isn't always easy, but you have to stay focused. And you have, in this era, you have to be vigilant all the time. You can't be sleeping. You just can't be sleeping. Things are changing so rapidly. Technology too is key to, we're now in the age of artificial intelligence. So you really got to be keen on technology. And that's one of the things I'm hoping to use my seat on the Indian Chambers to help do. Because we were discussing there's some things being done in Guyana, and though we're using some amount of technology, it's still a bit laborious or time consuming. And we're hoping to be able to tap into the technology. India, they're known to be one of the technology giants. Things that they're doing, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in manufacturing, mining, whatever, and how we can bring it to the business people here to make them save time, money, and make them more competitive and reduce their cost of production so that their margin can spread. So that's one of the key areas we're looking at, how we can help harness their technology to better our people, better our businesses.
Well, outside of the opulent world of business and banking, I know you do work with the Shahid boys, and I'm married to a Muslim woman. She makes donations to that place. Just before it was burned down, I guess it was built back. Yes. What's your role there? And
I'm not permanent there, but what I do is, like, when it was burnt, Miss Rahman reached out to me, and I was able to use my network.
Who's Miss Rahman?
Rahima Rahman. The Rahman family.
They're the ones probably in
that
charge
runs.
of it, right?
Yes, yeah. Right. So she reached out to me, and I was able to use my network, and we got donation, whether it was cash or material, and we were able to rebuild the girls' one. And I've always stayed in touch with it since then. Whether it's chairs, we've gotten chairs for them. So if there's any presentation, there's an audience style available. Sometimes it's simple things as fixing the toilet, if the toilet bowl has a problem. Like recently I visited on the boys' side, some of the kids, the Chester jars that they put their clothes in, it's gone. So I'm trying to get a few small ones. So each of them can have their little bedside Chester jar to have their little personal things. If sometimes it's a table that they eat at that needs repainting, redoing. And one of the things I like to do, because I know they get food pretty regularly, there's always generally a lineup. I like to focus on buying medicine, medical thing. During the COVID, I think even Mrs. Ramos, didn't really say, I'm just going to buy you medical stuff, because sometimes you go, the girls have cough. I'm not always able to go as much now, but some of them know me by name. And there's a change, because as they grow older, they move out. Some of them get married, as we say, alhamdulillah, praise God, right? But those are the kind of things I do. I try whenever I get the time to go. If they're in need, the office administrator would reach out to me for things. So and she knows, for me, it's not just like the food side. We focus on the other needs, because generally you have donors that take care of that.
So the building is completely built back.
Yes.
Good facilities for them. And
yeah, one time too, I did a summer camp on the girls' side, and when I was at GBTI, for me, I would like them to get role models, because obviously they're a bit secluded. So one time I had like the GBTI cricket club. The boys have the cricket team. We took them to the recreational center, and they had a ball game with them, and then they had a meal. But I would like, even through the private sector, we've been talking with one of the committees, I would like us to do more of that, not just for that orphanage, for other orphanages like that, because when we go out there, we don't know the impression. Sometimes you go and you just hug a little child, and they're looking at you with so much love. It's worth, going out the little mileage to do those things.
Shaleeza, our operators have signaled to me that our time has come, and I'd like you to just speak freely whatever you want to say to our viewers. So we have viewers all over the world who look into this program, and I am sure I can speak on behalf of Gildarie that it was indeed very exciting and satisfying to have a high-profile woman, successful woman entrepreneur in Guyana. The floor is open to you for your concluding remarks. Unless Leonard wants to say something before we...
Well, let her go first.
Let me again thank you for having me on the program. And Freddie, one of the reasons I came on is I want more women to come out and speak and be brave enough to come out on platforms like these and talk. Because Guyana has a lot of powerful women in the private sector, in the agri sector, in forestry, finance, law, medicine, name it. We have a lot of women who are doing well, but we don't know about it. And I'm hoping that having come out here, I make them brave enough to come out, and they're not worried about the questions you will raise. And I just want to say to ladies, we do have our place. It's no longer a male-dominated world. It's gender parity. And we have our contributions to make, and we are making it, and there's more space being created, and let's utilize it. And let's continue to make meaningful contribution to our society, to our communities, and to the nation at large.
Quickly, Leonard.
Thank you very much. And she said something
thank you very much.
You can use a platform here and say no to domestic violence. It's not something. Don't be a coward. Don't hit women. Don't kill women. Not something that we tolerate. Also, it is important to also use this platform here. We should not put limits or boundaries on what we could achieve. Here in our studio this evening is a classic example of how one individual, one lady has risen to
from
the very
switchboard
top.
to CEO.
I will not say that. And she has, she's holding so many positions right here in Guyana. And like she said, there's so many others who have really achieved, who have proven themselves. And it's always all hands on deck. Hats off to Ms. Shaw and the other ladies like her in our beautiful country.
Thank you very much, Shaleeza Shaw, for being here. We hope this would not be the last time. This has been the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon Show. We were coming to you live. If you didn't get a chance to see Ms. Shaw, please go on YouTube or go on Facebook, Guyanese Critic Facebook, and you will see the entire program. Shaleeza, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Been my pleasure too. Thanks. Thank you.